The thin, rusty atmosphere of Mars howled against the reinforced windows of Outpost Olympus. Dr. Alex Chen stared out at the barren landscape, the crimson dust dancing in swirling patterns across the rocky terrain. He pressed his hand against the cold glass, wondering for the 1000th time if they'd made a mistake coming here. Earth was dying, its water sources contaminated, its atmosphere increasingly hostile. Mars, with its hidden ice caps and potential underground reservoirs, had become humanity's desperate hope. Still brooding by the window? Commander Rivera appeared beside him, her weathered face showing the strain of 6 months in charge of the first permanent human settlement on the Red Planet. The drilling starts tomorrow. We need you focused. Alex nodded, though his thoughts remained distant. As the mission's lead hydrologist, he carried the weight of billions of desperate people on his shoulders. Find water, make Mars habitable, save humanity, simple objectives that felt increasingly impossible with each passing day. I'll be ready, he assured her, though the confidence in his voice didn't reach his eyes. The Mars Water Initiative was humanity's last, best hope. 12 astronauts, the brightest minds Earth had to offer, sent to establish the first colony and locate enough water to sustain future waves of human migration. The science was sound, ground-penetrating radar had detected massive ice deposits beneath the surface. But theory and reality on Mars had proven to be vastly different things. That night, unable to sleep, Alex wandered into the observatory dome, the only place in the outpost where you could see the stars without the red tint of the Martian atmosphere. He often came here when doubt crept in, finding comfort in the distant light of the cosmos. But tonight was different. A strange glow pulsed on the horizon, too steady to be natural, too bright to ignore. Instinctively, he reached for the high-powered telescope, adjusting the settings with practiced hands. What on earth? He whispered, then corrected himself with a humorless laugh. What on Mars? Through the lens, he could make out a structure, unmistakably artificial, nestled between 2 towering cliffs. It was unlike anything in the outpost's geological surveys. This area had been scanned dozens of times. There was no way they could have missed something so obvious, unless it hadn't been there before. Against all protocol, against every safety regulation drilled into him during 3 years of training, Alex made a decision that would change everything. He signed out a rover, logged a false research expedition to collect soil samples, and headed toward the mysterious light. The journey took hours, the rover bouncing over the uneven terrain as the twin moons of Mars cast eerie shadows across his path. With each kilometer, the rational part of his brain screamed at him to turn back. A solo expedition was suicide. The Martian nights were lethal. Commander Rivera would have his head, but something pulled him forward. Curiosity, destiny, or perhaps just the desperate need to find something, anything, that might save his dying species. As he approached the glowing structure, its true nature became clear. It wasn't human in origin. The architecture was too fluid, the materials unlike anything manufactured on Earth. It was a ship, or more accurately, what remained of one. Half buried in the red soil, its hull breached in multiple places, it had clearly crashed here long ago. Alex parked the rover and approached cautiously, his heart pounding against his ribs. The entrance was a jagged tear in the side of the vessel, illuminated by a pulsing blue light from within. Common sense told him to report back to base immediately, but the scientist in him needed to see more. Inside, the air was surprisingly breathable, though tinged with an alien sweetness that made his head swim. The corridors curved organically, like the inside of some massive seashell, leading him deeper into the heart of the vessel. And then he heard it, a sound that couldn't possibly exist on this dead world. Weeping. Following the sound, Alex found himself in what appeared to be a control room. Displays in an incomprehensible language flickered weakly, casting a pale glow over the huddled figure in the corner. She, and somehow he knew it was a she, looked almost human, save for the iridescent quality of her skin and the delicate ridges that lined her forehead and cheeks. She was bound by what appeared to be energy restraints, her wrists raw and bleeding a strange silver fluid. When she looked up, her eyes, 3 of them, arranged in a triangle, widened in terror. "Please," she said, and Alex stumbled backward in shock. She was speaking English. "Please help me. Before they return." Who? Alex managed to ask, his mind reeling. Who's returning? My captors, she replied, her voice melodic despite her fear. They hunt the ice worlds for water. Your Earth was next. But I sabotaged our ship, forced us to crash here. Alex's blood ran cold. You know about Earth? About humans? We've been studying your kind for centuries. A bitter smile crossed her alien features. We're not so different, you and I. Both of us just trying to survive. The ground beneath them suddenly trembled, dust raining from the ceiling. The alien girl's expression contorted with panic. They've found us, she whispered. You need to decide now. Free me, and I'll show your people where to find more water than you could ever imagine. Or leave me and prepare for what comes next. Alex stood frozen at the crossroads of humanity's fate, the choice before him impossible yet unavoidable, and somewhere in the darkness of the ship, something began to move. The sound grew louder, a rhythmic clicking that echoed through the metal corridors. Alex's breath caught in his throat as he looked between the bound alien and the darkened passage behind him. Training had prepared him for countless scenarios. Equipment failures, dust storms, even the psychological effects of isolation. Nothing had prepared him for this. What are they? He whispered, already reaching for the laser cutter attached to his utility belt. The Vaxrith, she replied, her voice trembling. Water harvesters. They've stripped 12 worlds dry already. She strained against her restraints. Please, there isn't much time. Alex hesitated only a moment longer before activating the cutter. The blue beam sliced through her bonds with surprising ease. As the restraints fell away, the alien girl rubbed her wrists, the silver fluid, blood, smearing across her iridescent skin. My name is Lyra, she said, rising to her feet with an unexpected grace. She was taller than he'd initially thought, nearly 7 feet, her body lithe and powerful despite her apparent captivity. And you've just made yourself an enemy of one of the most dangerous species in this sector of the galaxy. I'm Alex, he replied, as if they were meeting at some conference back on Earth instead of a crashed alien ship on Mars. The absurdity of the situation almost made him laugh. Alex Chin. I'm a hydrologist with the Mars Water Initiative. Lyra's triumph. Your eyes narrowed with interest. A water seeker. That explains why you're here. She moved to one of the consoles, her long fingers dancing across symbols that rearranged themselves at her touch. Your expedition won't find what you're looking for, not where you're drilling. The water is deeper, hidden beneath layers of permafrost and iron oxide. Before Alex could respond, the clicking intensified. Lyra grabbed his arm, her touch sending an electric tingle up his spine. We need to leave. Now. She pulled him toward a different corridor than the one he'd entered through. Is your transport nearby? The rover, yes, Alex said, struggling to keep up with her long strides. But it can't outrun anything faster than a dust storm. Lyra's expression darkened. It won't have to. I have a plan, but you'll need to trust me. Trust. Such a simple word, yet how could he possibly trust an alien he'd met minutes ago? But as the clicking turned to screeching, and the screeching gave way to the unmistakable sound of pursuit, Alex realized he had little choice. They burst out of the ship into the cold Martian night. The rover sat where he'd left it, its solar panels gleaming under the starlight. Alex's suit automatically sealed against the thin atmosphere, but Lyra seemed unaffected, breathing the carbon dioxide with ease. Your physiology, Alex began, is adapted to multiple environments, she finished, climbing into the passenger's seat of the rover. My species evolved on a world with a shifting atmosphere. Now drive. Alex didn't need to be told twice. He jumped into the driver's seat and fired up the engine, the electric motor humming to life. As they pulled away from the crash site, Alex caught his first glimpse of their pursuers in the rearview camera. They moved like water themselves, fluid, relentless, their bodies a shimmering blue-black that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. There were 3 of them, emerging from the ship with predatory precision. The Vaxrith don't tire, Lyra explained, her eyes fixed on the camera feed. They don't rest. They exist for one purpose, harvesting water to sustain their hive worlds. And they were coming to Earth next. Alex asked, steering the rover around a field of jagged rocks. Lyra nodded grimly. Your oceans would have sustained them for centuries. When I discovered their plans, I couldn't stay silent. My people, the Nyeri, have observed your species for generations. We've watched you struggle, evolve, reach for the stars. I couldn't let them take that from you. So you crashed their ship? Just to save Earth. To save Earth, but not just Earth. Lyra's gaze was distant now, looking beyond the Martian horizon. We Nyeri believe all sentient life deserves a chance to reach its potential. The Vaxrith see other species only as obstacles or resources. Alex's mind raced. If what she was saying was true, humanity had been on the brink of extinction without even knowing it. Head northeast, Lyra instructed suddenly. Toward those twin peaks. There's something there you need to see. The twin peaks loomed in the distance like giant fangs against the night sky. Alex adjusted course, acutely aware of the fuel gauge dropping into the red zone. The rover wasn't designed for long-distance travel outside the mission parameters. We won't make it that far, he warned. Not without a recharge, and there's no sunlight for the panels. Lyra smiled, a strangely human expression on her alien face. You won't need sunlight where we're going. As they approached the peaks, a narrow fissure became visible between them, a dark gash in the Martian landscape that didn't appear on any of the mission's topographical surveys. Stop here, Lyra commanded when they were still 100 meters from the opening. But what's in there? The reason I chose Mars to crash land on, she replied, climbing out of the rover. And the reason your mission is going to succeed beyond your wildest expectations. Alex followed her out into the cold night, checking the oxygen levels in his suit, 4 hours remaining. Enough time to explore, but not enough to get back to Outpost Olympus without a recharge. As they walked toward the fissure, Lyra stopped suddenly, her head tilted as if listening. They're tracking us, she said softly. All 3 of them. We need to hurry. The fissure was narrower than it had appeared from a distance, barely wide enough for Alex to squeeze through sideways. Lyra, despite her height, slipped in with ease, her body seemingly able to compress itself. Come, her voice echoed from within. And prepare yourself, Alex Chin of Earth. What you're about to see will change everything you thought you knew about Mars. Taking a deep breath, Alex squeezed into the darkness, the walls of the fissure pressing against his chest. His helmet lights illuminated only a few feet ahead, but he could sense a vast space opening up before him, and then he heard it, the one sound no hydrologist could ever mistake. Water. Running water. On Mars, Alex stumbled forward, the narrow passage suddenly opening into an enormous cavern. His helmet lights swept across the space, revealing what his mind initially refused to accept. A vast underground lake stretched before them, its surface rippling with gentle currents. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like stone daggers, some reaching down to touch the water's surface, forming natural columns. This is impossible, Alex whispered, his scientific training battling with the evidence before his eyes. All our surveys, our drilling sites, how did we miss this? Lyra moved to the water's edge, her iridescent skin reflecting in the dark surface. Your instruments can't penetrate the magnetic ore in these rocks. It creates a natural shield against detection. She dipped her fingers into the lake, creating tiny ripples. The Nyeri discovered this decades ago, during our first observations of Mars. We've protected this knowledge, waiting for your species to be ready. Ready for what? Alex asked, kneeling beside her to collect a sample in a sterile container from his pack. The liquid was clear, cleaner than anything he'd seen even on Earth in recent years. For the truth, Lyra replied, her 3 eyes meeting his. That you're not alone in this universe, and that survival sometimes requires cooperation. Before Alex could respond, his comm unit crackled to life. Commander Rivera's voice cut through the static, tight with controlled fury. Chen, if you can hear this, respond immediately. Your unauthorized excursion has put the entire mission at risk. Return to base now or face severe consequences. Alex hesitated, looking between Lyra and the sample in his hand. How could he explain what he'd found? Who would believe him? Your people are waiting, Lyra said softly. But so are mine. And so are the Vaxrith. Whatever you decide now will affect all three of our species. With shaking fingers, Alex activated his comm. Commander, I've found water. Not just ice or moisture. An entire underground lake. And I'm not alone. The silence that followed seemed to stretch for eternity before Rivera's voice returned. Now see. Yushis. Explain, not alone, Chin. Before he could answer, a bone-chilling screech echoed through the cavern. Lyra leapt to her feet, her body tensing. They found us, she hissed. The magnetic shield doesn't hide us once they have our scent. The clicking sound Alex had heard in the ship now multiplied, echoing off the cavern walls until it seemed to come from everywhere at once. Shadows moved at the edge of his light beam, fluid, unnaturally fast. Chen, what's happening? Rivera's voice demanded from the comm. Send help, Alex said quickly. Coordinates on my tracker. Bring weapons. We're not the first visitors to Mars. He shut off the comm and turned to Lyra. What do? We need to reach the central island. She pointed to a rocky outcropping in the middle of the lake. There's something there that can help us. Can you swim in that suit? Alex shook his head. It's too bulky. I'd sink. Lyra scanned the cavern, her eyes settling on what looked like ancient stone steps carved into the cavern wall, leading to a narrow ledge that circled the lake. Then we go the long way. Quickly. As they scrambled toward the steps, the first of the Vaxrith emerged fully into view. It moved like liquid mercury, its form constantly shifting between humanoid and something more primal, all teeth and claws and hunger. Two more appeared behind it, their bodies reflecting Alex's helmet light in rippling patterns. Don't look directly at them, Lyra warned as they climbed. They can sense fear through eye contact. The ledge was barely wide enough for Alex's boots, forcing him to press his back against the cold stone wall as he inched forward. Lyra moved with surprising agility despite her height, her feet finding purchase where Alex saw none. Below them, the Vaxrith approached the water's edge. One dipped what might have been a hand into the lake, then brought it to what might have been a mouth. A sound like satisfied sighing filled the cavern. They're tasting it, Lyra whispered, determining its purity, its volume, calculating how many of their kind it could sustain. And if they decide it's enough? Alex asked, already knowing the answer. They'll call for a harvester ship. They'll drain this lake, then move to the surface, extracting every drop of moisture from Mars before moving on to Earth. They were halfway around the cavern now, the central island tantalizingly close. But the ledge ahead had collapsed, leaving a gap of at least 10 feet between them and the continuing path. I can't jump that, Alex said. The gravity of Mars may have been lighter than Earth's, but it wasn't that much lighter. Lyra studied the gap, then looked down at the Vaxrith, who had begun some sort of ritual around the lake, their bodies forming a circle as they swayed in unison. They're starting the calling ceremony, she said urgently. We have minutes, not hours. She reached into a hidden pocket in her clothing and removed what looked like a smooth stone. Squeezing it between her palms, it began to glow with a soft blue light. When she opened her hands, the stone had transformed into a rope-like substance that continued to grow in length. Nyeri biotechnology, she explained, securing one end to a rocky outcropping. It responds to thought and need. She swung the glowing rope across the gap, where it seemed to attach itself to the ledge on the other side. It will hold your weight, but only briefly. These are emergency measures, not meant to last. Alex looked at the narrow, glowing lifeline with skepticism, but the increasing frenzy of the Vaxrith below left little room for debate. He gripped the rope, feeling it pulse slightly under his gloved hands like something alive. Go, Lyra urged. Now. Taking a deep breath, Alex launched himself off the ledge. The rope held, allowing him to swing across the gap and land, somewhat clumsily, on the other side. The moment his feet touched stone, the rope began to disintegrate into glowing particles. Lyra, he called, reaching out helplessly as the gap between them remained unbridged. She smiled sadly. There was only enough material for one crossing. Go to the island. Find the activation panel. It will be marked with symbols like these. She traced 3 circular patterns in the air, which glowed briefly before fading. Press them in sequence. It will awaken what sleeps beneath the lake. What about you? The Vaxrith had noticed their movement now, their ceremony interrupted. 2 began scaling the cavern wall with frightening speed, heading directly for Lyra. I'll hold them off as long as I can, she said, backing away from the edge. This is why I came here, Alex. This is my purpose. I'm not leaving you, he protested, looking frantically for another way across. You must. Your species depends on it. Mine too. Her voice softened. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't fighting, but trusting someone else to finish what you started. The first Vaxrith reached the ledge, its form solidifying into something more humanoid as it approached Lyra. She stood her ground, pulling another stone from her pocket. Go, she shouted, and this time Alex obeyed, turning to run along the remaining ledge toward the central island. Behind him, flashes of blue light and inhuman screeches told of Lyra's battle. He forced himself not to look back, focusing instead on reaching the island and finding whatever activation panel she had mentioned. The island was smaller up close, little more than a rocky mound rising from the center of the lake. Moss-like vegetation covered parts of it, glowing faintly with bioluminescence. Alex scrambled to the top, searching for anything resembling the symbols Lyra had shown him. His helmet comm crackled again. Chen, we've locked onto your position. ETA 20 minutes. What the hell is happening down there? There's no time to explain, Alex replied breathlessly. Just hurry. A piercing scream, Lyra's voice, unmistakably, echoed across the cavern. Alex whirled around to see her struggling in the grip of 2 Vaxrith, the third moving toward the island with unnatural speed, half swimming, half running across the water's surface. Desperation fueling his search, Alex tore away patches of glowing moss, revealing the ancient stone beneath. And there, weathered by time but unmistakable, were the 3 circular symbols Lyra had described. They pulsed faintly as if responding to his presence. The approaching Vaxrith was halfway to the island now, its body taking on a more streamlined form as it raced across the water. Alex's fingers hovered over the symbols, doubt suddenly gripping him. What exactly was he activating? What slept beneath the lake? Lyra had earned his trust, but he was about to trigger something that could affect not just his mission, but potentially all of Mars, all of Earth. Sometimes the bravest thing is trusting someone else, he whispered to himself, echoing Lyra's words. The Vaxrith reached the shore of the island, its body reforming into a towering, humanoid shape with too many limbs and no discernible face. It reached for Alex with elongated fingers that dripped with the same silver fluid that had been Lyra's. Blood at Alex's hand came down on the first symbol, which glowed bright blue at his touch. The cavern rumbled. The second symbol pulsed faster, as if urging him to continue. The Vaxrith lunged at Alex's finger, found the second symbol, then the third in quick succession. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the entire island began to tremble. The lake's surface rippled, then churned, as something massive began to rise from its depths. The Vaxrith froze, its body quivering with what Alex somehow knew was feared. In the center of the lake, a massive structure began to emerge, sleek, gleaming, and undeniably artificial. Water cascaded off its metallic surface as it continued to rise, revealing intricate patterns that glowed with the same blue light as Lyra's technology. Chen. Rivera's voice came through the comm again. We're at the entrance to the cavern. What are we walking into? Alex stood transfixed as the structure. A ship, he realized, far larger and more advanced than the crashed vessel he'd found Lyra in, continued to rise until it towered over the lake. I think, he said slowly, watching as the Vaxrith began to retreat, I just helped start a war. The massive ship hovered above the lake, its surface rippling with patterns of blue light that seemed to communicate in some silent language. Alex stood frozen on the island, equally mesmerized and terrified by what he'd unleashed. The Vaxrith had retreated to the edges of the cavern, their fluid bodies pressed against the stone walls as if trying to melt into them. That a hatch opened on the underside of the vessel, and a beam of intense white light shot down, bathing the island in its glow. Alex shielded his eyes, the brightness overwhelming even through his helmet's protective visor. Report. What the hell is that thing? Commander Rivera's voice crackled through his calm, panic evident despite her military discipline. Before he could respond, Alex felt the strange sensation of weightlessness. The beam was lifting him, pulling him upward toward the ship. He struggled instinctively, but his body refused to obey, suspended in the light like an insect in amber. Chen's being abducted. He heard someone shout through the comm. Dr. Patel, the mission's xenobiologist, her voice thick with both fear and scientific fascination. No, Alex managed to say, though he wasn't entirely sure himself. Not abducted. Invited. As he rose through the air, he caught sight of the expedition team at the cavern entrance. 6 figures in Mars-red environmental suits, weapons raised but useless against the technological marvel before them. Rivera stood at the front, her posture radiating helpless fury. Stand down. Alex called to them. Don't shoot. These aren't the hostiles. He couldn't explain how he knew this, only that he did, a certainty that had settled in his bones the moment the ship began to rise. This was Lyra's plan, her purpose. This was what she'd been protecting. The beam pulled him into the ship, the hatch sealing beneath him with a soft pneumatic hiss. He found himself in a circular chamber, the walls lined with the same pulsing light patterns as the exterior. The gravity returned suddenly, dropping him to his knees on a floor that felt oddly warm through his suit. Welcome, Alex Chin of Earth. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, speaking perfect English with an accent he couldn't place, musical and ancient all at once. Who are you? Alex asked, slowly rising to his feet. Where's Lyra? A section of the wall shimmered and became transparent, revealing what looked like a medical chamber beyond. Lyra lay on a raised platform, her wounds being treated by devices that hovered around her body like concerned insects. Her eyes were closed, but her chest rose and fell with steady breaths. She lives, the voice said. Her injuries are severe but not fatal. The Vaxrith are brutal when cornered. Relief flooded through Alex, followed immediately by wariness. You still haven't told me who you are. The air before him shimmered, coalescing into a holographic figure that bore a striking resemblance to Lyra, though taller and adorned with what appeared to be ceremonial markings across its iridescent skin. I am Thale, High Archivist of the Nyeri Conclave. This vessel is the Mnemosyne, our repository of knowledge and last line of defense. The hologram gestured to the walls around them. We have observed your species for millennia, watching your struggles, your triumphs, your slow climb toward the stars. So Lyra was telling the truth, Alex said. About everything? Lyra is my daughter, Thale replied, his 3 eyes blinking in what might have been sadness. She broke our most sacred law of non-interference when she crashed the Vaxrith harvester and revealed herself to you. But she did so knowing the alternative was the extinction of your species. A new hologram appeared beside Thale, a map of the solar system, with Earth highlighted. Overlaid on the image were dozens of ship signatures, approaching from the outer reaches. The Vaxrith you encountered were merely scouts, Thale explained. Their main fleet approaches, drawn by the water resources in this system. They care nothing for sentient life, only for the resources that sustain their hive mind. They would drain Earth dry in months, leaving nothing but dust and death in their wake. Alex's heart sank. So Lyra didn't stop them. She just delayed them. She did more than that, Thale corrected. She brought you to us. She activated the Mnemosyne. She created the possibility of an alliance. An alliance? Alex repeated, trying to process the implications. Between humans and Nyeri? It is unprecedented, Thale acknowledged. But these are unprecedented times. The Vaxrith have grown too powerful, too hungry. Their consumption of water-rich worlds has accelerated beyond even our predictions. If they are not stopped here, they will sweep through this sector of the galaxy like a plague. A third hologram appeared, a blueprint of the Mnemosyne, revealing technologies beyond anything humanity had ever dreamed of. Water purification systems that could process toxic sludge into pristine drinkable water. Atmospheric regulators that could terraform a planet in decades rather than centuries. Defensive capabilities that could repel even the Vaxrith fleet. We offer these to your kind, Thale said, in exchange for your help in the coming battle. Battle? Alex's mouth went dry. We're scientists, not soldiers. The Mars Water Initiative is a civilian mission. Your species has a long history of warfare, Thale observed, his tone neutral. And an even longer history of survival against overwhelming odds. We need that spirit, that determination. The Nyeri are scholars, observers, keepers of knowledge. We have not fought a war in 10,000 years. And what exactly do you expect us to do against an alien armada? Our most advanced spacecraft can barely reach Mars. Thale's hologram smiled, the expression eerily human. With our technology and your ingenuity, much becomes possible that was not before. He gestured again, and a section of the floor became transparent, Revia. Ling the cavern below. The expedition team had entered fully now, surrounding the lake with scientific equipment, taking samples, establishing a perimeter. Through his comm, Alex could hear their excited chatter, the scientific discoveries already being catalogued. There's enough water here to sustain the Mars colony indefinitely, Dr. Franklin, the geologist, was saying. And preliminary tests show it's purer than anything on Earth. It's a miracle. No, Commander Rivera replied, her voice grim as she stared up at the hovering ship. It's a complication. A new alert sounded in Alex's helmet, an incoming transmission from Outpost Olympus. Director Harlow, the overall mission commander who had remained at the base. Rivera, Chen, all personnel. Return to base immediately. We're picking up multiple objects entering the solar system at impossible speeds. NASA thinks it's a meteor shower, but the trajectory is all wrong. They're slowing down. They're heading for Mars. The blood drained from Alex's face as he looked at Thale. The Vaxrith fleet? The Vanguard, Thale confirmed. The main fleet is still days away. But they know the Mnemosyne has awakened. They will not allow our technology to oppose them. Alex's mind raced. Everything had changed in the span of hours. What had begun as a desperate search for water to save humanity had transformed into something far larger, a war for survival that now involved 3 species and potentially the fate of the entire solar system. I need to speak with my people, he said finally. They need to understand what's happening, what's at stake. Of course, Thale agreed. But know this, Alex Chen of Earth. The moment Lyra revealed herself to you, the moment you activated the Mnemosyne, your world's path was set. There is no returning to blissful ignorance. The Vaxrith know of Earth now, and they will not stop until they have consumed every drop of water it holds. As if to punctuate his words, the ship trembled slightly. Thale's hologram flickered, his expression turning grave. They're here, he said. The Vanguard has entered Mars orbit. A new hologram appeared, a real-time image of the Martian sky above them. 3 massive ships, their designs reminiscent of the crashed vessel where Alex had found Lyra but vastly larger, descended through the thin atmosphere, leaving trails of disturbed dust in their wake. They're heading directly for Outpost Olympus, Alex realized with horror. They must think that's where we are. Not think, came a weak voice from behind him. No. Alex turned to find Lyra standing in the doorway of the medical chamber, leaning heavily against the wall. Her wounds were bandaged with some sort of luminescent material, and her skin was paler than before, the iridescence dimmed. What do you mean? Alex asked, moving to support her. I wasn't the only one on the scout ship, she said, her voice strained with pain and something else, guilt. There was a Vaxrith communication officer. If they survived the crash, they would have signaled the fleet. Told them about the human outpost. But why attack there? The water is here, in this cavern. Because, Lyra said, meeting his eyes with all 3 of hers, they don't just want the water anymore. They want revenge. And they know the best way to hurt you, to hurt me, is to destroy what you love. Alex felt the blood drain from his face as the terrible realization hit him. The rest of my team, the colony, they're all at Outpost Olympus. Over 50 people. Thal's hologram expanded, showing the 3 Vaxrith ships now hovering directly over the human settlement. Small figures could be seen rushing about in panic below. "We have to warn them," Alex said, activating his comm. "Director Harlow, evacuate the outpost now. Hostile forces approaching your position." "This is not a drill." Only static answered him. "They're jamming communications," Thale observed grimly. "Standard Vaxrith protocol before an assault." "Then we have to go there," Alex insisted, turning to Lyra. "Can this ship fly? Can we intercept them?" "We can," she said, straightening despite her pain. "But the Mnemosyne is a repository, not a warship. Its defenses are designed to protect knowledge, not to wage war." "I don't care," Alex said, a new determination hardening his voice. "Those are my people. I brought this to them. I won't abandon them." Lyra looked to her father, some unspoken communication passing between them. Thal's hologram nodded solemnly. "Very well," he said. "The Mnemosyne will rise. We will face the Vaxrith over your outpost. But understand, Alex Chen of Earth, what this means. By taking this action, the Nyeri Conclave formally allies itself with humanity against the Vaxrith Collective. After 10,000 years of neutrality, we choose a side, your side." The ship hummed with increasing power, the blue patterns on the walls pulsing faster. Through the transparent section of floor, Alex could see the expedition team backing away as the massive vessel began to rise further. "Commander Rivera," he tried again on the comm, and this time got a weak signal through. "Get your team to safety. We're going to attempt to intercept the attackers at Outpost Olympus." "We." Rivera's voice came back, broken with static. "Chin, who the hell is we?" Alex looked at Lyra, who had moved to what appeared to be a control interface, her hands dancing across symbols that responded to her touch. She met his gaze and offered a small, pained smile. "Our allies," he replied simply. "And maybe humanity's only hope." The Mnemosyne burst through the top of the cavern, rock and dust cascading around it as it rose into the thin Martian atmosphere, setting course for Outpost Olympus, and the 3 Vaxrith ships that waited there, weapons already deploying from their hulls. "Water isn't the only thing at stake anymore," Lyra said quietly, standing beside him as the red landscape of Mars streaked beneath them. "Now it's freedom. Survival. Future." Alex nodded, watching as the outpost appeared on the horizon, the skeletal structures of humanity's first Mars colony dwarfed by the predatory shapes of the Vaxrith vessels. "I hope you're ready for this," he said, not entirely sure if he was speaking to Lyra or himself. She reached out, her alien hand closing around his human one in a gesture that transcended species. "No one is ever ready for war, Alex," she replied. "We just do what we must to protect what matters." The Mnemosyne accelerated, heading directly toward the heart of the gathering storm. The Mnemosyne broke through the thin cloud layer above Outpost Olympus, its massive form casting a shadow over the human settlement. Below, Alex could see people scattering like ants, rushing toward the emergency shelters. The 3 Vaxrith ships hovered in a triangular formation, energy weapons already deployed and glowing with ominous purple light. "They're preparing to fire," Lyra said, her fingers working frantically across the control interface. "Father, can the shields withstand a direct assault?" Thal's hologram flickered. "Not indefinitely. The Mnemosyne was built to preserve knowledge, not to wage war." "Then we need to be smarter than them," Alex said, watching as the lead Vaxrith ship oriented toward the outpost's main habitat dome. "Lyra, you said your people have been observing humanity for generations. Does that mean you've been collecting our transmissions? Our data?" "Yes," she confirmed, giving him a curious look. "The Mnemosyne contains a complete archive of human communications since your species began broadcasting radio waves." Alex's mind raced. "Can you access our military frequencies? The ones used by Earth's defense systems?" Understanding dawned in Lyra's triangular eyes. "You want to make them think reinforcements are coming." "Exactly," Alex said. "If we can broadcast on those encrypted channels, maybe we can bluff them into believing Earth has defenses they don't know about." Thal's hologram expanded, accessing some unseen database. An interesting strategy. The Vaxrith are cautious by nature. They prefer overwhelming force rather than risking unexpected resistance. The deck beneath them shuddered as the first Vaxrith ship fired, a beam of energy striking the ground near the outpost's solar array, sending equipment and regolith flying into the thin Martian air. That was a warning shot, Lyra said grimly. The next one won't miss. Do it now. Alex urged. The ship hummed as Thale accessed the archives, broadcasting on frequencies that hadn't been used since Earth's last global conflict. Alex grabbed what looked like a communication device from a nearby console. Attention Vaxrith vessels, he said, hoping his voice sounded more confident than he felt. This is Acting Commander Alex Chin of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are targeting a civilian research outpost protected under Interstellar Treaty 947. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Lyra shot him a questioning look. Interstellar Treaty 947? Complete bluff, Alex whispered. We don't have any treaties beyond Earth. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, incredibly, the Vaxrith ships paused, their weapons still glowing but not firing. They're scanning communications channels, Thale reported, searching for confirmation of an Earth defense fleet. Give them something to find, Alex said quickly. Thale's hologram smiled, an eerily human expression on his alien features. The Mnemosynes systems hummed as it began broadcasting dozens of fake transmissions, military coordinates, fleet movements, weapon deployments, all created from the archive of human military communications but modified to suggest a level of technology humans could only dream of. They're hesitating, Lyra observed, watching the enemy ships through the viewing screen. But they won't be fooled for long. Alex's mind raced. The bluff had bought them time, but not a solution. They needed something more substantial than fake transmissions. The water, he said suddenly. That's what they really want. Can we use it somehow? Weaponize it. Lyra exchanged a look with her father's hologram. The Mnemosyne has water manipulation technology. It's how we've preserved the underground lake for centuries. What if we showed them a bigger prize? Alex suggested. Something so tempting they'd forget about the outpost entirely? Understanding dawned on Thale's face. Create a false water signature. Make them believe there's a much larger reservoir elsewhere on Mars. Exactly, Alex nodded. Get them away from the outpost, buy us time to evacuate our people. It could work, Lyra agreed, already manipulating the controls. But we'd need to make it convincing. And where would we lead them? Alex pointed to the map of Mars displayed on one of the holographic screens. The Olympus Mons caldera. It's remote, uninhabited, and the volcanic activity might mask any inconsistencies in our fake readings. The Mnemosynes systems reconfigured, projecting a massive water signature deep beneath Mars's largest volcano. Almost immediately, one of the Vaxrith ships broke formation, turning toward the new target. It's working, Lyra said, hope creeping into her voice. The scout ship is investigating. But the other two remained positioned above the outpost, weapons still ready. The lead vessel fired again, this time striking one of the smaller research domes, which collapsed in a shower of regolith and twisted metal. They're not all buying it, Alex said grimly. We need to do more than just distract them. Commander Rivera's voice suddenly broke through on Alex's helmet comm, weak but audible. Chin, whatever you're doing up there, it's not enough. We've got 37 people in the emergency bunkers, but they won't withstand a direct hit. If you've made some kind of alien friends, now's the time to ask for more than just a lift. Alex looked at Lyra, desperation in his eyes. There must be something else we can do. Lyra hesitated, then turned to her father's hologram. The Archive Protocols. Section 19. Thale's expression turned grave. Lyra, that's forbidden. The knowledge contained there is exactly what we need right now, she interrupted. Father, you said it yourself, after 10,000 years, we've chosen a side. We can't back away now. For a long moment, Thale's hologram flickered as if in internal debate. Then, reluctantly, he nodded. A new section of the ship opened, revealing a chamber Alex hadn't seen before. Inside was what looked like a control chair, surrounded by pulsing blue light. "What is this?" Alex asked as Lyra led him toward it. "Section 19 of the Archive Protocols," she explained. "The forbidden knowledge. Weapons technology we abandoned millennia ago when we chose the path of observation rather than interaction." "You're going to fight them?" Alex asked, hope rising in his chest. "No," Lyra said, gesturing for him to sit in the chair. "You are." Alex hesitated. "Me? I don't know how to operate alien weapons." "You don't need to," Lyra explained. "This interface connects directly to your thoughts. It was designed for emergency use, to allow non-Nyari to access our technology if the need was dire enough." "Which it certainly is now," Thale added. "But be warned, Alex Chin. Once activated, the system will draw on your instincts, your military knowledge, your protective impulses. It will be intense." Another explosion rocked the outpost below as the Vaxrith ships resumed their attack. Alex made his decision and sat in the chair. Immediately, restraints formed around his arms and legs, and a neural interface descended toward his helmet. "Your suit is in the way," Lyra said. "You'll need to remove your helmet." "I can't breathe the air in here," Alex protested. "You can," Thale assured him. "The Mnemosyne adapted its internal atmosphere the moment you came aboard." Tentatively, Alex unlocked his helmet seals and lifted it off. The air tasted strange, sweeter than Earth's, with an almost metallic undertone, but he could breathe it. The neural interface settled against his temples, cool and somehow alive against his skin. "What do I do?" he asked. "Protect your people," Lyra said simply. "The system will do the rest." The interface activated, and suddenly Alex could feel the Mnemosyne as if it were an extension of his own body. Could sense its systems, its capabilities, its ancient weapons long dormant but now awakening at his unconscious command. Knowledge flooded his mind, tactical options, defense strategies, offensive capabilities beyond anything humanity had ever conceived. Without consciously deciding to do so, he directed the ship downward, positioning it between the outpost and the Vaxrith vessels. Energy shields deployed, absorbing the next attack meant for the habitat domes. "They're recalibrating their weapons," Lyra warned, reading data from a nearby console. "Targeting our shield generators." But Alex was already moving the Mnemosyne, the massive ship responding to his thoughts with impossible agility. Defensive countermeasures deployed automatically, disrupting the Vaxrith targeting systems. From concealed ports along the Mnemosyne's hull, energy weapons emerged, not firing yet, but ready. Through the neural link, Alex broadcast directly to the Vaxrith ships. Not in words, but in something more primal, a clear impression of resolute defense, of technological superiority, of absolute determination to protect the humans below. The Vaxrith hesitated, their ships holding position. For a moment, Alex thought they might retreat. Then, as one, they attacked, all weapons converging on the Mnemosyne. The shields held, barely. Through the interface, Alex felt the strain on the ancient systems, felt power reserves dropping dangerously low. But he also sensed something else, a vulnerability in the Vaxrith formation, a flaw in their attack pattern. Without hesitation, he directed the Mnemosyne's weapons to fire, not at the ships themselves but at the space between them, disrupting their coordinated assault. The energy beams sliced through the thin Martian atmosphere, creating a shock wave that sent the enemy vessels tumbling out of formation. "It's working!" Lyra exclaimed, but the victory was short-lived. The Vaxrith quickly recovered, adapting their strategy. Two ships circled around, attempting to flank the Mnemosyne while the third continued its frontal assault. Through the neural link, Alex sensed the Mnemosyne's systems struggling to track multiple targets. Power reserves were dropping faster now. The ancient ship pushed beyond its designed capabilities. "We can't keep this up," he said through gritted teeth, feeling the strain as if it were his own body being taxed. "We need another option." That's when the idea came to him, not from the ship's archives but from his own human understanding of Mars. Of water. Of pressure. "Lyra, the underground lake, how deep does it go?" "At least 2 kilometers, she replied. "Why?" "And it's connected to a larger water table?" "Yes," part of a vast network of subsurface water that encircles almost half the planet. Alex smiled grimly. Then I know how to end this. Can the Mnemosyne manipulate that water remotely? Create pressure changes? Direct flow? Thal's hologram expanded. Yes, but what are you planning? A natural weapon, Alex replied. One the Vaxrith won't expect because they don't understand Mars the way humans do. Through the neural interface, he connected with the Mnemosyne's water manipulation systems, extending them far beyond their intended range. He could feel the vast network of subsurface water beneath the Martian crust, feel the pressure points, the weak spots, the places where the ancient mantle had been fractured by billions of years of cooling and contraction, and directly beneath the hovering Vaxrith ships, he found what he was looking for, a fault line connected to the underground water system, dormant for millennia but still structurally weak. Everyone at the outpost needs to secure themselves, he warned Rivera through the comm link. What's about to happen will make your worst dust storm feel like a gentle breeze. With precision born of scientific knowledge enhanced by alien technology, Alex directed the Mnemosyne's energy into the fault line, superheating the water trapped in the rocks below. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then Mars itself seemed to cry out. The ground beneath the outpost buckled as steam and pressurized water burst upward through the newly reopened fault. A geyser of Martian water, unseen on the surface for perhaps billions of years, erupted directly beneath the Vaxrith ships, enveloping them in superheated vapor and mineral-laden liquid. The ship's hulls, designed to withstand energy weapons and vacuum but not pressurized water, began to fail. Systems overloaded, engines sputtered, and one by one, they lost altitude, crashing into the Martian surface far enough from the outpost to avoid collateral damage. As quickly as it had begun, Alex shut down the geyser, directing the water back into the underground reservoirs to prevent unnecessary loss to the thin atmosphere. The neural interface retracted from his temples, leaving him gasping and disoriented in the control chair. That, said Lyra with something like awe in her voice, was not in our archives. Human ingenuity, Thal's hologram observed. Remarkable. You used their own objective against them. Alex stood shakily, moving to the viewing screen to assess the damage. The outpost was largely intact, save for the one research dome that had been destroyed in the initial attack. The Vaxrith ships lay broken across the Martian landscape, their threatening presence neutralized. Rivera, he called through his comm, status report. We're shaken but alive, came the commander's voice, steadier now. Whatever you did, it worked. But Chin, we've got bigger problems. Earth just made contact. They've detected a large fleet entering the solar system. More of those things, I'm guessing. Alex looked at Lyra and Thale. The main Vaxrith fleet. They'll be here in days. And they'll be far more cautious now that their advance force has been defeated, Thale added. They'll bring planetary harvesters, destroyer escorts. They won't underestimate us again. Us, Alex repeated, the word hanging in the air between human and alien. So this alliance is official now? Lyra stepped forward, taking his hand in hers. It always was, from the moment I chose to save your world instead of observing its destruction. The question is, what do we do now? Alex turned back to the viewing screen, looking beyond the Martian horizon toward the distant blue that was Earth, still unaware of how drastically the universe had changed around it. Now, he said with quiet determination, we prepare. We take what we've learned here, the water we've found, the technology you're willing to share, and we build a defense. Not just for Mars or Earth, but for all our worlds. Thal's hologram expanded, displaying the solar system and the approaching Vaxrith fleet. They will reach Mars in 72 hours, Earth in approximately 5 days after that. Time is short. Then we'd better get started, Alex said, already moving toward the communication console to contact Earth. Humanity's about to learn they're not alone in the universe, and their first introduction will be a war for survival. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. Not just survival, Alex. Something more important. What's more important than survival? He asked. Understanding, she replied. The Vaxrith consume because they know nothing else. My people observe because we fear to interfere. Your people, humans, You adapt, you change, you find solutions no one else would consider. Like using Mars itself as a weapon. She gestured to the fallen Vaxrith ships. That's why I saved you. Why my father has broken our oldest laws to help you. Because if any species can find a way to end this cycle of consumption and observation, it's yours. Alex nodded slowly, the weight of her words settling on him. This wasn't just about water on Mars anymore. It wasn't even just about saving Earth. It was about changing the very nature of how intelligent species interacted across the stars. As the Mnemosyne descended toward the outpost to begin evacuating the human scientists, Alex felt a strange sense of peace amidst the looming conflict. Humanity had come to Mars seeking water to ensure their survival. What they'd found instead was something far more precious and far more dangerous than they could have possibly imagined. A new place in the cosmos. A new understanding of their potential. And perhaps, if they were very lucky, a new future for three civilizations bound together by the most fundamental molecule in the universe, water. But as the ship touched down on the red soil of Mars, Alex noticed something strange through the viewing screen. The crashed Vaxrith vessels were changing. Their broken hulls seemed to be liquefying, flowing together like mercury, reforming into something new. Lyra, he said urgently, pointing to the phenomenon. What's happening? Her three eyes widened in alarm. Impossible. They're evolving. Adapting. The water, Thale's hologram flickered with agitation. The Martian water has trace elements we didn't account for. It's accelerating their regenerative capabilities. The puddles of liquid metal that had been three separate ships were now flowing together, combining into a single, massive form that rose from the Martian dust like some ancient nightmare awakening. What is that? Alex whispered. The reason the Vaxrith are feared across 12 galaxies, Lyra replied, her voice barely audible. Their final adaptation. When individual ships are destroyed, they can combine into a single entity, more powerful, more intelligent, and utterly focused on revenge before consumption. The metallic mass continued to reshape itself, towering higher until it stood like a colossus over the Martian landscape, its surface rippling with the same mercury-like fluidity as the smaller Vaxrith scouts. But where they had been merely predatory, this thing radiated malevolence. Get the humans aboard, Thale ordered. All of them. Now. What about Earth? Alex asked. The fleet. If we don't survive what's rising out there right now, Lyra said grimly, the fleet won't matter. Because no one will be left to warn Earth at all. The colossal Vaxrith entity took its first thundering step toward the outpost, each movement sending tremors through the Martian crust. And somehow, impossibly, Alex could hear its voice, not through his ears but directly in his mind, cold and ancient and hungry. We have tasted your world's water, it said. And we will have it all. The colossal Vaxrith entity took another thundering step forward, each movement sending tremors through the red soil. Inside the Mnemosyne, alarms blared as the ship's sensors struggled to analyze this new threat. Everyone on board! Alex shouted into his comm as the last of the expedition team raced up the boarding ramp. All accounted for, Rivera confirmed, her voice tight with controlled fear as she stared through the viewport at the monstrosity outside. Chin, what the hell is that thing? The reason we need to leave. Now. Alex turned to Lyra, who was already back at the control interface, her fingers dancing across symbols that pulsed with urgent light. Can the Mnemosyne outrun it? In atmosphere, no, she replied grimly. We need to reach orbit. The ship shuddered as the Vaxrith entity struck the ground with what might have been an arm, sending a shockwave across the Martian surface that nearly toppled the remaining outpost structures. It's toying with us, Thale observed, his hologram flickering with data streams. Learning our capabilities before it attacks directly. Alex felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. 52 humans now crowded the Mnemosyne's decks, scientists and engineers who had come to Mars to find water, not to fight in an interstellar war. And beyond them, billions more on Earth, still unaware of the danger approaching their world. He made his decision. Get us to orbit, he told Lyra. But I'm going back to the neural interface. Alex, no, she protested. The strain nearly killed you last time. A second connection could cause permanent damage. We don't have a choice. He was already moving toward the control chair. That thing is between us and escape. We need a distraction. Before she could stop him, Alex settled back into the chair. The neural interface descended, connecting with his mind once more. Immediately, pain lanced through his temples as the alien technology integrated with his consciousness, but he pushed through it, focusing on what needed to be done. Through the ship's sensors, he could feel the Vaxrith entity more clearly now, not just its physical presence but its consciousness, ancient and cold and hungry. It was more than a combined form of the three ships. It was a manifestation of their collective will, their shared hunger, their determination to consume all water in their path. But in that hunger, Alex sensed weakness. The Mnemosyne's engines roared to life, lifting the ship from the Martian surface. The Vaxrith entity lunged, metallic tendrils extending toward them with frightening speed. Instead of evading, Alex did the unexpected. He directed the Mnemosyne straight toward the entity, activating the ship's remaining weapons. Energy beams sliced through the tendrils, severing them from the main mass. But instead of attacking further, he executed a sharp turn, bringing the ship low over the vast underground lake they had discovered. "What are you doing?" Lyra's voice seemed distant through the neural connection. "Using what we have," Alex replied, feeling the strain of the interface pressing against his consciousness like a physical weight. "Water." Through the ship systems, he located the exact fault line he had exploited earlier. But this time, instead of causing a geyser, he directed a precise energy pulse deep into the water table, superheating a small section near the surface. Steam exploded upward, not as violently as before but with purpose, carrying with it something else. The unique mineral compounds of the Martian water, the same elements that had accelerated the Vaxritha's regeneration, now dispersed into the thin atmosphere as a fine, glittering mist. The entity hesitated, its fluid form rippling with what might have been confusion. Then, predictably, it moved toward the mist, drawn by the water signature. "Now!" Alex shouted, both aloud and rough the ship's communication systems. The Mnemosyne's engines fired at maximum thrust, shooting the ship upward through the atmosphere while the Vaxrith entity was distracted by the mineral-laden mist. But as they climbed, Alex maintained his focus on the water below, using the ship's energy systems to precisely alter the molecular structure of the minerals the entity was absorbing. "What did you do?" Rivera asked, watching through the view screen as the entity began to shudder, its fluid form becoming less cohesive. "Change the game," Alex replied, his voice strained as the neural interface began to withdraw. The minerals in Mars' water, they helped the Vaxrith adapt initially, but too much, too fast. On the surface below, the entity was struggling, its massive form losing cohesion as the altered minerals disrupted its ability to maintain its combined state. It began to separate, breaking back into smaller components that no longer possessed the same unified intelligence. "You poisoned it," Thales' hologram observed with something like admiration. "With the very elements it sought to consume." "Not poisoned," Alex corrected, wincing as the interface fully disengaged, leaving him drained but conscious. "Just gave it indigestion." A weak laugh rippled through the humans crowded around the view screens, the tension breaking like a physical thing. As the Mnemosyne achieved orbit, the view screens shifted to show the approaching Vaxrith fleet, still days away but unmistakably large, dozens of ships moving with ominous purpose toward the inner solar system. "We've won the battle," Lyra said quietly, helping Alex from the control chair. "But the war is just beginning. Then we'd better start preparing." He straightened, looking around at the faces of his fellow humans, scientists who had become reluctant soldiers in humanity's first interstellar conflict. "Commander Rivera, we need to contact Earth. Director Harlow, I need your team to analyze everything we've learned about Vaxrith technology from the encounter." As the scientists dispersed to their new tasks, Alex turned back to Lyra and Thale. "Will your people send help when they learn what's happened here?" "The conclave will debate," Thale replied, his hologram flickering. "But Lyra's actions have already forced their hand. The Nyarei can no longer merely observe. For better or worse, we are involved now." "For better," Lyra said firmly, taking Alex's hand in hers. This was always meant to happen. Not the war, perhaps, but the meeting of our kinds. The sharing of knowledge. The beginning of something new. From the Mnemosynes orbit, Mars looked peaceful, its red surface betraying nothing of the drama that had unfolded there. Somewhere below was the vast underground lake, still hidden, still protected, water that could sustain a human colony, water that had brought two species together and attracted a third. Humanity came to Mars searching for water to ensure our survival, Alex said, gazing down at the planet that had changed everything. Instead, we found our place in the universe. The Mnemosyne turned away from Mars, setting course for Earth, carrying with it not just the precious data about Martian water that the mission had sought, but something far more valuable, knowledge of humanity's new allies, new enemies, and new responsibilities among the stars. As the red planet receded behind them, Alex thought about the long journey ahead, not just the physical distance to Earth, but the greater journey humanity now faced. From a species concerned with its own survival to one that would now stand alongside ancient civilizations in a conflict that spanned galaxies. Their search for water on Mars had given them what they needed, just not in the way anyone could have predicted. Not merely the means to survive, but a reason to thrive. Not just a future for Earth, but a place among the stars, and it had all begun with one human brave enough to help an enslaved alien girl, a choice that had changed everything.